kiln to get it up and running. And of course, when the kiln was born as a proposal, and what's happened to us since, you think of the model of the kiln was to come and work closely next to each other in a co-working space. And why would we want to do anything other than that? And not long after setting up the kiln, it has, amongst with, all of the other businesses in Worcester were faced with a huge challenge to their business model. And again, credit to those that managed the kiln, that they have managed to survive this period of prolonged lockdown and actually start to really deliver on some of the economic outputs that the funding is there to support. So we'll take you through that in the paper. But just for those who may not be familiar with the detail, the kiln is the building just behind the Guildhall, number 4 Copenhagen Street. It is a co-working space developed mainly for creative and tech freelancers, but also to support small businesses to deliver a previously unmet need in the city for a collaborative co-working space. And the kiln's USP is it's a place to come and collaborate. And the examples that we've been able to collect, some of which are in the appendix in terms of the good news stories, some of which are in the outputs, which Janet can talk you through, and some of which are unfortunately a bit commercially sensitive because they relate to how businesses are working together there, and they don't want to necessarily tell us, council people, all of those details. But it has become a little hive of activity and connections, and that's exactly what it was set up to do. Albeit it's had a difficult time during COVID. The model is a community interest company, which means that's a not-for-profit company. And the legal model has what's called an asset lock in it. So, profits don't come out of the company and into the hands of the owners. They stay locked into the asset, which is there are 2 founding members who came from F8 Creates, who are Worcester creative entrepreneurs. And they've been joined along the way by 2 other directors who also are involved in the management and the running of the kiln. One is the manager and the other is the business coach. And a 5th director who's appointed by the council, and that was previously Councillor Bayliss and is currently Councillor Gregson. And the council is currently involved in the kiln at that board level because of the level of public investment that's been. That's not to say that that's the model we need to have in the longer term. That's been our setting up and our intervention model. It's important that in the longer term, the kiln is financially sustainable and from a governance point of view, stands on its own 2 feet. So that's very much everybody's aspiration. I'm going to ask Janet to talk you through a little bit of the detail because she was involved and kiln founder members would view Janet as a founder member, even though she isn't technically a director. Seeing this idea through and leveraging in the funding and making sure that the building was refurbished and ready to open was a huge amount of work. And I know that council committees supported that process as it went through. What the kiln is required to do in return for that financial investment is to report against a set of economic outputs, both to Worcestershire LEP, which is a significant funder, and Worcester City Council, which is a funder and also is. And members may also recall that when the kiln first started, we identified that a working capital loan was required as well, just to make sure that we were going to trade solvently in the early days whilst we were settling with cash flow. And that's a working capital loan of 20,000. So we have obviously had the disruption of the pandemic and some quite significant periods of closure, some support through the furlough scheme, but nevertheless, as I said before, it's part of the business model really. Since the kiln's been reopened, they've had to really rebuild that membership model, attract people back. And they've had a lot of success of doing that since. Totally, people are really pleased to be able to sit at a socially distanced, appropriate distance from each other and still co-work. They want to be together in a building. It still is very much a sensible model, data suggests. So we've pulled together some information, some facts and figures in the appendices, and I hope members you've had the opportunity to look at the glossy brochure, because obviously it's difficult to put those really commercially sensitive details in, but we did want to give a sense of the benefits, and all the quotes are taken from all individual different businesses with no, you know, vested interest in saying anything other than objective appraisal of why they work there, why they pay their membership fee. So that's good, honest feedback. To supplement that feedback, there was a membership survey done in the summer, and it was really positive, the things that people were saying, really rich data, good examples of if I hadn't worked here, I wouldn't have met X. X introduced me to Y. And as a result of that, our business has grown and I've employed more people. And those are real stories. And that's really satisfying because that's what was set out to do. I think the last point I wanted to make is in terms of future direction, the Kiln brand is owned by the two founding members. And there's obviously a lot of interest in co-working spaces. Consulted for years. And they may well wish to do more consultancy work on the back of the success of the Kiln Worcester. And that's absolutely fine. Our model doesn't preclude that from happening. As long as the Kiln Worcester meets its outputs and pays its bills to the City Council, then our economic intervention has been justified. So I think it's important that we recognise that in future direction, when we're on track, the model might change. That's you know, that's not for tonight, but I thought it was important we put that in the paper. And in terms of why this has come tonight, other than giving you that general update, we also wanted to request authority to move some of the output delivery dates in output schedule, simply because of the impact of COVID. And as you'll see when Janet takes you through it, that's not to say that they haven't well on course to meet many outputs. And indeed, they've already smashed a few of them and far exceeded them. But it's just that in reality, some of those outputs, it's not been realistic to say that they can be met simply because there's been such a prolonged period of closure. So I think in summary, I think that probably covers the key. But I'm just going to ask Janet just to talk through what was the funding package at the outset and what are the outputs we're closely tracking now.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Sian. Janet, if you could just. Yes, I will do. Yes, when the idea of the sort of kiln came about, or when I became involved in, I think it was 2017, one of the first challenges was to secure the funding, and at the time, Worcestershire LEP had some funding which they were looking to support co-working space. But alongside that, we also had to provide funding from the City Council as well. So that was very much how things started. And we did in the end secure 195,000 from Worcestershire LEP. Unfortunately, the amount of money that was required from City Council did grow from the initial ideas. For any of you who remember 2 Copenhagen Street just behind us, the building was in a bit of a sorry state, and it's like a lot of old buildings. You start the work and then you realise the problems. But I'm pleased to say, obviously, the City Council did support with a much bigger funding package to get the building that we've got today, and it is so much improved for what the intended purpose. Alongside that, we also had to put in some rental package support as well, and that is something that is in place for, I think it's about another four years. But beside the funding, we also had to identify the economic outputs that were going to be achieved, because at the end of the day, this was an economic, and still is an economic development project. So that was delivering outputs as prescribed by the LEP, but also outputs related to our city plan. And whilst on the output table, I've identified with a LEP or City Council, there's a huge amount of crossover in terms of the way we report. We did quite a lot of background work to get to the numbers, and what we hope to achieve, because at the end of the day, you know, funders putting money in, they do want to see some decent outputs. But they're all very much related to sort of encouraging this collaboration, supporting new businesses with this new opportunity. So the two started with the 2 first outputs relate to membership, and these are businesses that have been members of the kiln and have sort of come and gone for various reasons. Some of them because they've grown and they need new space, and I've gone on to other things. But also members that we retain and the current figures. Beyond that, it wasn't just about having this building for the specific number of members, but for the wider community. Because whilst we encourage, obviously, collaboration amongst the members, we want other people to come and collaborate and join in. So we have this higher figure of 400, where these are businesses coming in, attending training workshops and courses, people who are paying on an hourly basis, people coming in for one-to-one sessions. And a good example of this in the early days was, and which we're just starting to resurrect now, is startup courses, people coming in for one-to-one advice and that type of thing. There's advisors in there who give advice on intellectual property, bookkeeping, law, all the things that a new business or growing business needs. So we needed to capture the fact that the kiln was more than just for the paid up members. We also were looking to support new business startups as well, and that one is related to our own city plan, because it's an affordable space. There is startup packages where people will pay a lesser rate while they start, but also with that they get the wraparound service to make sure they're accessing the relevant business support, because there's an awful lot of business support out there, and by encouraging them to come into the kiln is a way of sort of obviously making sure they're accessing support as well. And it's a two-way thing, where we're act as a conduit for the business support agencies, but also they refer people into the kiln as well. So some very strong partnerships that we have there. We also saw the kiln as somewhere that businesses could come and grow through that support, through that collaboration. And as it turns out, I think I was probably a little bit tentative in the target figure of 6, because what the kiln manager did a few months ago was an in-depth survey with the members to see how many of those had either increase their turnover since being at the kiln, or increase a number of members of staff, which we saw as 2 growth indicators. Obviously, for turnover, it wasn't, the information was quite commercially sensitive. And I was astounded when the results came back to show that actually 27 businesses said that since they've been working there, they had grown as a business. So that's why I was a little bit tentative on that. I realised I was a bit tentative on that figure. The other area we wanted to support was graduates. Obviously, one of the things of the kiln was trying to capture graduates coming out of the university, particularly the university here in Worcester, for those who want to start a business in this sort of friendly environment that's affordable, but also the chance to work alongside established businesses. We're a reasonable way through that target, but sort of, I think, anticipating we will achieve that quite easily. And they're always sort of looking at ideas of working alongside college and the university on initiatives to particularly support graduates. We also had a target for creating jobs. Now, when we started out, this was jobs that the kiln itself was going to create. But in hindsight, that has been reviewed with the LEP in recognition of this growth figure, that actually there are businesses in there now who are creating jobs because they've been in the kiln. They said, and the LEP were saying, because obviously they want to share a good news story, and they're saying it's only fair that we actually reflect the job creation with the businesses who are based there as well. So that's why that figure now is shown as 13. So it's not that the kiln's created 13 jobs. It is the fact that it's the members have created those jobs as well, and the LEP are accepting that as a revision to the output. And just sort of moving on a bit, as Sian said, one of the important things of the kiln is about collaboration. So when we talk about collaboration activities, these are initiatives that either kiln members have taken the lead on doing. We mentioned a business coach is a director, and she's set up quite a few initiatives to enable businesses to come together, because one of the things I know they identified was it can be quite lonely working on your own. And whilst I say as a member of staff, I have targets I have to meet, when you're running your own businesses, you don't have that. So part of that work she's doing is enabling the businesses to set targets, and then they report back to each other, which is, I understand, is quite a powerful tool. So there's been 5 collaboration activities so far which have been created by the kiln, but obviously with the effect of COVID, nothing could happen. Only just this last month or so that they've been able to resurrect that type of thing. As I said earlier, the kiln was never just about the members, but also having this base event. So especially in the early days, we had people like Worcester Bid holding their members meetings there. I'll just say there's been startup courses, some community groups have hired the space as well. And you know, the good thing about this is getting footfall over the door. People see what it's like, and then hopefully some of those will then become users of the kiln. But again, this figure was going very well up to COVID, but they haven't been able to do anything for 18 months. It's just starting again now. The following investment from the site that will be achieved, it is the rental package. And the commercial floor space refurbished was basically, that's already been achieved because it's what we did to the building. And then we also have to report on level of occupancy, and that's very much related to the number of active members. And then finally, a couple of things are rental values, which again will be achieved because that was sort of pre-planned anyway at the start of the project, and their gross income figure. Now, that one is quite low because a lot of it is about the problems they have been having with the lockdowns, losing the memberships, rebuilding the memberships, not being able to do the activities. And dare I say that it's probably quite an ambitious target, but there's no harm having an ambitious target. So say some of the outputs have been achieved, some they are behind schedule on, but obviously we're quite mindful that a number of these were March 22 around really quickly. So I've been working with the LEP to see about reprofiling, and they've had the same issue across all their projects. And they are given the flexibility of reprofiling for another 1 to 2 years on without affecting the funding agreement, which is quite important because we've got a clawback clause in there and we didn't want that to be put back either. So that clawback clause will stay in until next March. And then that removes the risk for the City Council. So all we're really asking tonight is that obviously councillors note the situation with the outputs, and they accept our proposal to do a reprofile. And if that is approved, then I can then go back to LEP, tell them what the new profile is. That would then be included into the business plan. Then obviously our own performance monitoring system.
Thank you, Janet. I can tell your enthusiasm. You've obviously been with this project. I can remember it starting, and you've been with this project from the beginning. And I can sense the enthusiasm that you have for it. And it is a super project. It's turned out to be a really good idea. Particularly the book. I enjoyed reading the appendix and reading people who've actually used the kiln and said how good and how helpful it's been. So do we have any questions? Happy with that?
Chair, thank you. Just a quick one, if I may. The detail that's contained within 210 and 211, I mean, this is, for me, very encouraging, I'm sure, for everyone here. Anything we can do to support small businesses and startups, absolutely. The question, I guess, and it's been touched on to some extent, is the recovery position and the extent to which we can be confident with it, as much as we can ever be confident about things going forward. I'm hugely encouraged by the idea of social working and people, because self-employment can be quite an isolating experience for some people, because it can be quite lonely when you're starting off. So that in itself is an encouragement. Could you just perhaps dive a little bit more into the detail about the extent to which we can really realistically expect that recovery to continue and hopefully be beyond our expectations originally?
Yes, I mean, that is a very valid point about the impact that COVID's had and the recovery. And I must admit, there's times when it was all happening, and I was sort of thinking about the kiln, thinking this is the make or break. Sadly, it might sort of wither through no fault of its own because it is just so new. or it's actually on the cusp of a great opportunity. And I know, you know, there's been a lot of talk about, you know, working from home is a new way of doing it, but I think the more it went on, the more people realise it actually it's very lonely working from home. And I think especially after the lockdown earlier this year, the members were just screaming to get back, which was, you know, which was just as well. I mean, I think it is still going to be about hard work, really. I mean, it's about keep doing what they're doing and doing well. And I think, you know, the sort of the feedback in the booklet proves that benefit. Keep putting that message out, and they're not sitting on their laurels. They are still very active on social media and sort of sending out that message of, you know, if you got tired of working at home, come in here, introducing very flexible work packages so that, you know, people don't have to jump in completely. They can trial it, they can see, you know, is it working for their business? And then importantly, start to do, you know, sort of some of the collaboration activities, events. I mean, for example, one next week, which we've been talking about for ages, is called Female Hustlers, very much aimed at women who run businesses. And, you know, I know they're looking at other ideas for graduates. So I think it's a case of obviously recognising the hits that the kiln has taken, rebuilding, you know, the good base that they had, but realising they can't stand still and looking at very much those opportunities, you know, especially as methods of working are changing. And that's very much the sort of work I'm starting to do with them again. I mean, I can't sort of put figures down, but, you know, there is a close scrutiny of the budget, which is looked at by the board, and you know, just to sort of try and keep on top of it, really. So I think that's probably the best assurance I can give at the moment is making sure the kiln's putting out the message how relevant they are, you know, to the small business community, and you know, making people feel comfortable when they do come in there that is a safe place to work.
Are there any more questions? No, I did actually have contact from Adrian Gregson, who's one of the directors, and he said he was happy with what was being proposed for this evening. So if there are no other questions, can I ask for your consent, please, that we note the update on the kiln and we approve the reprofiling, which is really the output delivery dates. Is everybody happy for that? Yes. Thank you. Now we go on to agenda item 7. 7 and 8 are quite linked, actually, but we'll take 7 first. And this is the allocation of funding for the skills officer post. So I think, is that Helen? Thank you.
Thanks, Chair. Yes, as you mentioned, this is linked with item 8, and it's also linked to Shane's update earlier on budget setting. It's looking for your approval to take this proposal to the Policy and Resources Committee for budget setting to be funded from reserves in 22 to 23. So the first one is the skills officer post. It was created in a temporary capacity in July 2017 and delivers a range of support to local businesses and employees. At the March 2021 PEB committee, you'll recall that it was approved to allocate funding from the additional restrictions grant, fund this post for 1 year to 31st of March next year, on the basis that it's very focused on COVID recovery. And this report seeks to identify an additional year's worth of funding from reserves for 1st of April 2022. That's the preferred option. And the reason for a temporary solution is because we're pending the appointment of the new head of service for economic development and also the review of the current employment and skills strategy. So I won't go through all the details of what the role covers. Suffice it to say, it's a very busy role. Their priorities are to include things like supporting, obviously, the implementation of the coronavirus economic recovery plan, supporting the development of the town investment plan delivery, looking specifically at the community skills and enterprise project, and looking at matching external revenue for that. And also reviewing work on council's capital programmes, such as Future High Streets Improvement Fund and a number of other projects that we do to establish a process for securing the economic benefits of those projects, and in particular the skills aspect of that. And they are currently reviewing the current employment and skills strategy, and that's due to in March 2022. So the alternative option is not to fund the post, which we do not recommend, as it would require the reallocation of other staff members to deliver the outcomes that are required of this role, and would also lead to a reduction in the services delivered by the ED team, economic development team, towards the objectives of the city plan and other key. Post the finances, it's identified that the finances would come from the business rates risk reserve, as the role is so closely tied into benefits for businesses, and any loss of business rates income would fall to that reserve. That's. I mean, I won't go through all of the implications, but as you can see in the report, we've done a full review of this, and hence that third option.
Thank you. Are there any questions on this? Councillor Barnes.
Yeah, you're looking to fund both these posts from reserves. The COVID recovery funds, could that be used instead?
Fortunately, not. The spend for that has to be completed before the 31st of March 2020.
Any more questions? Rhaegar.
Question so much, Chair, and more of a comment, which is that I think both of these posts are utterly essential to our programme of post-COVID recovery. And I think our local economy is in desperate need of a real focus. So I'd be very much.
I think they're very much, both posts are very much a reflection of what we want. So, as it says in the alternative, don't have an office, then officers direct. So, yes, so no more questions. If there's no more questions, approval then. That we note the proposal to fund the post of skills officer, and that we take this to P&R that the post should be funded. Agreement? So going on to the other post, tourism and events officer. So if we
could. So same principle in terms of recommending to P&R committee funded from reserves for next year, and the same process from March 2021, being funded through the additional restrictions grant based on its COVID report. So the preferred option for this one again is to fund the post from reserves in line with the above recommendation, and also a one-year solution on the front at the moment. So the role of tourism and events officer is absolutely pivotal to the success of a series of projects to encourage the city, including the organisation of major events for the city, such as the fair, and working with event organisers across the city to deliver a significant number of events for the programme. And in particular, obviously, I don't need to draw to your attention that the Victorian Fair has been highlighted as a key priority for the city. That is a large part of the responsibilities for this post. And a busy programme of events, such as I will come on to in the next report, is scheduled for 2022, including summer festivals, the return of Worcester Carnival, the return of Worcester Music, Commonwealth Games, and the Queen's Jubilee celebration. So a couple of alternative options for this one have been considered. One is to not fund the post, again not recommended because of the impact on the city plan, and in particular to draw attention to the fact that the Victorian Christmas Fair has been demonstrated to generate over £7 million. And another option was considered, which is to engage with partners or agencies to take the lead role in events in the city, and this is not recommended due to identified issues with quality and control of those if outsourced to external partners. The post is required to support the development of the city as a destination for business and tourists, currently forms part of the COVID recovery programme, and in future will help to secure the economic prosperity of the city in the coming year. And it's therefore appropriate to fund the post from the business rates risk reserve on the basis that work will reduce the risk of loss to business rates income.
Are there any questions on this one? I think again a post that's essential to Worcester, making Worcester attractive to hold these events. and make it what we want. Questions? Sorry.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, just picking up, I think more so, even more so than the last one, Helen, it's essential that Worcester City Council keep a hold on this lead, and anybody sort of, thinking about sort of going down the partner agency route, and we've seen issues we've had in the past, and actually as a democratically elected council, it allows us very much with a Worcester hat on to keep control really, and it's jewel in the crown. Absolutely. So I would be dead against it being open up to agencies.
Thank you. Okay, so if there are no more questions, then can I have your agreement that we note the proposals to fund the post and that we take this to P&R as well for this to be funded from reserve? Are we those in favour of that? Good. Thank you. Right, we go on to the next agenda item, which is the Commonwealth Games and the Queen's Jubilee events in 2022. Are you doing this one too, Helen? Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, it's another request for funding from reserves. This is to acknowledge the special year that we have in 2022 with a couple of key significant events, namely Commonwealth Games and the Queen's Jubilee. So as you will all be aware, the 2022 Commonwealth Games is taking place on our doorstep in the West Midlands. The Games have the capacity to deliver significant economic benefits, and the city really should be getting involved with activities, opportunities for local businesses, and encourage the community to get involved with the Games cultural programme. We are working closely with organisations such as West Midlands Growth Hub and the Commonwealth Games to make sure that we're facilitating opportunities for our businesses. Janet and I are working this week on a meeting with the team. So it's an ongoing project. What we're requesting for here is some funding to support and enhance that activity and to deliver a programme of events associated with that activity as well next year to support businesses. So that will be things like promotional materials, engagement activity, collaboratively with partners on tasks. Any work that's undertaken will be supported by in-kind contribution from our partners, and it will enable officers to offer small amounts of match funding to secure contribution for the events. Advanced scoping work that we've carried out has indicated that a budget of up to £30,000 would be necessary for this section. And then another exciting event next year is the Queen's Platinum Jubilee. So Her Majesty the Queen will become the first British monarch to celebrate a Platinum Jubilee after 70 years of service, and places across the UK are being highly encouraged to get involved in celebrating that celebration. We've already got some activity planned. So for example, we're looking at beacon lighting from Fort Royal Park. The community engagement team have already secured some funding to support Worcester residents to organise street parties. We'll be encouraging communities to get involved in a tree planting initiative. We'll obviously be working with businesses for things like window displays and offers, and we've talked a bit about some ideas already. And we are also looking at articles and campaigns highlighting royalty connection. So we're asking for £10,000 funding to support and enhance those activities. So we're not looking to deliver our own events for that. We're looking to support the events of others that are working on it. And obviously, if agreed, as plans progress, we'll update this committee with plans and activities that date as they become clear.
Thank you. Sounds like a good year next year. Lots of things going on, lots of things to look forward to. Are there any questions on? I am. So can we have support for this? Support that we note the proposed activities and that we go to P&R to ask them for another. All in favour? Right, on to agenda item number 10, which is Christmas in Worcester, one of our big events that in the city calendar, but possibly the biggest. Forward to it, having missed it last year. So are you going to tell us about this, Helen?
I am, yeah. It's my last report tonight. I'm sure everyone's And I'm not asking for funding this time. So this is an update as previously requested on Christmas and Easter activity. And this is our last update on the 2021 event because we are now five weeks away from the event itself. 4 weeks this Thursday it will be. So the update on activity so far, I'm going to talk about the Christmas lights. We've got new suppliers that have been contracted. They'll be switched on the 27th of November. Victorian Fair, which is the 2nd, 5th of December, and the Worcester Christmas Market, which is the 6th to the 22nd of December. In addition, today, I'm just going to quick update on the festive parking offers. A £50,000 recovery fund has been set aside for parking incentives. We're just confirming final details of that, and we'll be starting. And that will be to, well, all of this activity is to encourage people to visit the city, shop and dine and enjoy the activities. In terms of the Christmas lights, we've now carried out the work on New Road Roundabout in preparation for the lighting of the big chestnut tree. And you'll remember that we're not having a specific Christmas tree installed, we're lighting the existing tree there. And we've done some clearing out of existing Christmas lights, which have been removed from trees. We are shortly commencing installation with the trees being installed just after Remembrance Sunday as normal. So 2 weeks away. And the stage will be in Cathedral Square with entertainment from 2 p.m. until 6 p.m. The lights will be switched on at 6, complemented by activity throughout the city centre with appearances from pantomime stars and walkabout entertainers. We're working very closely with Worcester Bid, Youthcom Radio, Crown Gate Shopping Centre, Square Shopping Centre, and the objective of the event is to increase footfall, boost the economy, and that's the reason why we moved it to a Saturday, so that we can encourage people for longer. So in terms of planning activity for the Victorian Christmas Fair, obviously we're just over a month away from the event. Trading stalls at the fair are sold out, a waiting list is in place, and there is some movement, but we've got the waiting list to fill those spaces when they become available. We have procured hostile vehicle mitigation barriers. We're working with an organisation called Crowd Guard, worked with those before. Coach bookings are, as I've said every month, significantly under what they've been in previous years. So there's not much we can do about that. We will be ready for a flurry of bookings if they come in the week before the event. But all the other events are saying the same, and people are booking later or not booking at all. So we won't know until the event itself what the numbers are going to look like. But what we have done is put in place mitigation with suppliers so that we're not paying for the full amount of coaches, we're paying on a sliding scale so that the space that we're hiring is so we've sort of done what we can to mitigate the impact of the coach numbers. In terms of the public, however, there is a huge appetite for Christmas, and for example, the Facebook event that we put out for the Christmas Fair has generated 25,000 people who've liked or said they're going or are interested in going. And bearing in mind that in normal years, that's maybe 5,000. That does show us that there's an appetite for Christmas. We can anticipate a busy event. And although the coach numbers aren't there, I think that the audience numbers, so I think that should be encouraging. In terms of entertainment, we've booked, pretty much booked up the main stage on Cathedral Square, and we're working with the Cardinals out on Prior Street and also Crown Gate Shopping Centre at the entertainment locations. The Thursday night carol service will take place at Worcester Cathedral, and that will be followed by the traditional procession to the official opening ceremony of the event. And a business newsletter has been sent to retailers. We're very keen to work with businesses in the area, as always, to make sure that they're maximising the opportunities presented by the event. We're sort of on hand to talk to them about how that can work for them, for each of them individually. In terms of the Christmas market, then, from the 6th to the 22nd of December, 25 wooden chalets will fill the high street. And then on the weekends, the 11th to the 12th and the 18th to 19th, we'll have additional market stalls dotted in between the wooden chalets and also in Cathedral Square. And we've booked entertainment for that weekend as well, in terms of walkabout, still walk, that kind of thing. And then just finally, a note on risk management. As you know, and as you've come to expect, we're monitoring the risks throughout, and we are really preparing for every single eventuality, which I won't go into here, but we've got a risk management plan in place, which is monitoring external factors which we can't influence. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you. The Christmas fair, as you say, people do have an appetite for Christmas. I think after last year, when things were very modified and everybody had to be very careful about what they could and couldn't. This year, people are really looking forward to the whole of the Christmas period. And I think it's a lovely idea having the stalls here from the beginning of December up to Christmas, because the Christmas fair is usually so good, but then it goes and we're back to a normal high street again. So having those stalls there will really extend that period and hopefully bring people into it. Even though, you know, that we say our coach bookings are down, let's hope that last few weeks that really does take off. Are there any questions? Thanks.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I mean, obviously the great unknown here, Helen, and thanks very much to all the team for all the work you're putting in on this. I think the great unknown is the coaches coming in. I'm just concerned, and obviously I appreciate that not everybody who comes on coach will have a car, but is any sort of indication given of whether those people will be coming by car instead? And obviously what pressure will that put on our current car parks and parking services around the city?
Yeah, it's a really good question, because the car parking is normally full anyway for the Victorian Fair. So if we've got additional cars coming in, we're working with the county council as we do normally to put the park and ride on and make sure that that's fully operational. We're also looking at the opportunity for additional bike parking. So I'm just looking for a location for some bike parking. We're encouraging and working with, or we're encouraging the public and working with the train stations to facilitate them, people coming by train. That's always a busy route into the city anyway on the fair weekend. We've also briefed the parking team, as would always work with the parking team about that event anyway, and, you know, turning space around as quickly as we can. There's little else we can do realistically. And the key thing for us is messaging to encourage people into the city by alternative means, because the car parks are going to be full anyway. So.
Councillor Geraghty.
Thank you, Chair. Just to endorse your comments. The committee and ourselves held our nerve earlier in the year when, you know, some parts of the country, their events were postponed moving forward. I think even if we haven't got the certainty, and I take coach bookings, which are always welcome, but we may see even more local residents in towns, which will be really good. And I think there's a sense of a buzz that it creates, as you said, in terms of the run up to Christmas, but we can sustain that and continue that the weeks after that. I think it's a really good programme. Glad to see it moving ahead, and I'm glad we held our nerves earlier in the year when many councils might have said, well, maybe quite prominent places have decided not to have their events, and I think definitely sensible.
Councillor Agar.
To be said was said. It's a very encouraging situation. See this going ahead, but and also that you're actually trying to take cars out of the city in a big way. So, was there any free parking as well involved?
Not during the Victorian Fair. So we're looking at options at the moment for incentivising people into the city, but not during the fair weekend itself.
So yeah, on perhaps late night shopping night.
Yeah, so I'm not in a position to confirm what it's going to be yet, because we're still at the point of reviewing that, but it will be something along those lines. In the past, we've done late night shopping, done free parking on Thursdays, for example. So it might not be exactly that, but yeah.
Thank you. Councillor Lewin.
Chair. Thank you, Helen. So excited, honestly. I think it's going to be a brilliant event. And what you're saying about encouraging people to walk and cycle into, exactly right. I've seen that on other events that you've done. And it'd be really good if that message is really put out very strongly. I think there are a lot of people who do drive unnecessarily and actually want to prioritise the car parking for people who actually really need to come by car or other means. So if we could mainly get that message out, I'd be really happy.
Thank you. And Councillor Barnes.
Thank you, Chair. Have you been in touch with the bus companies to see if they can run on extra services?
particularly at weekends, because on Sundays, there are lots of routes where there are no buses at all at the moment. It'd be a great way over the December period to actually open up Worcester to areas that are disadvantaged at present. And that could include areas outside the city limits, the surrounding villages, to try and get extra footfall in that way.
And I'm sure we can have that conversation with them. Very practical. There and based on progress there.
Are there any more questions? Looking forward. Anybody out there? So are we happy to note this update? Yes? Good. Thank you. And we go on to agenda item number 11, which is the arches, the project update. The fabulous arches.
Thank you, Chair. I am delighted to be able to give a very positive report now about the arches development. I was just looking back through previous minutes, and it takes us all the way back to September 2018 when this project was first mooted, and we agreed to fund it as we have done. And it's taken a very long time to get security over the assets to put that progress in place. And of course, there's been a lot of disruption for the festivals over the last 18 months, but now we're in a much better position now, and I'm able to actually update on a couple of things. Any members who have walked along Cherry Tree Walk will have seen the arches now being filled in. We've got the steel structures going in, and some of the internal fitting work has been done. The floors have been laid, and we're starting to think about the externals, what that will start to look like, and start to think about letting the premises. So we've just been agreeing through the project board a letting strategy, and we'll start to now market the facilities quite in the next few weeks. Members will start to see information coming along through that. There are a couple of items just to bring up to date on 3.8. There was one particular concern, which was about the need for Network Rail to carry out inspection works, which may have held us up a great deal because we really struggled to get information on when that's going to happen, but they have now carried out inspections and have agreed that there's no work to be done. So we can now press on with getting the work completed. And Speller Metcalfe have a mission to achieve completion by 17th of December. Very ambitious, but we will see how they progress. But the other question is around the supply of specialised glazing, and that I'm afraid is not something we can do anything about. But we have got alternative proposals which might involve some alternative materials, just so that we can make the site secure, so that the electricity and so on, the utilities can be fitted. So those are progressing, and as I say, there will be more information coming out about those in the next few weeks. In terms of the festivals, we've had second nightlight, and by all accounts, that's been very successful in terms of bringing. One of the important things around that and the other festivals is to understand how this is supporting communities across Worcester, and how we're going to integrate this festival activity and provide a legacy for this. So I noted that there is a meeting to discuss legacy aspects in November. Well, actually, that took place last week. So we've now got 3 work streams flowing from that, which important. One of those is about how we make sure everybody understands the extent to which this activity is engaging with communities. So, for example, for the last light night, 2 of the projections were done in development with local schools. It's not just a question of artists coming along and presenting something. There was a developmental and community aspect to that. And there were, of course, events happening in outlying wards, so it wasn't all in the city centre. So there's a genuine attempt to engage more widely across the city on this work. Similarly, with the Participate work stream, they're trying to work with local students to engage in the process, and have just recently introduced a brief for students to talk about and present artwork around arches and how they might be used, how they've been deployed in art. And there'll be opportunity perhaps to use the arches space, which we hope to be for performances and exhibitions, to try and display some of that work. So we're seeing integration of the way that the Participate work stream is working with young people, integrate that with the art. And then finally, in terms of the destination, well, we have if members have had a look at the website, there's a really interesting work going on there. There's the festival's website that goes along with that. We have a logo, we have domain names, we have everything that we need. It's all set up and ready to go. And I think now really getting a lot of momentum behind this project. I hope that will continue through into the new year, in which case we'll be able to start next stage, which is to get people in there, get the space opened up, and maintain some of that momentum, which has already been delivered, because of course we've had quite a few new businesses have opened in that area. There's already a lot of interest. The last piece of the jigsaw will be opening up the Aldgate Street. So we have that walkway from the station all the way to Riverside. That one might take a little longer. There are quite a few issues to resolve in respect of that. I will provide more progress updates as we progress with it, but I think we can see, dare I say, light at the end of the tunnel. You knew that was coming, didn't you? Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. I just think this is such a fabulous project, because I remember before it started, and I thought, this is so ambitious. Surely we're never going to be able to. And the idea of being able to get off at Foregate Street and to be able to walk down to the river past all these workshops and cafes and different activities, I think is just such a... Does anyone want to ask a question? Councillor McKay.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. It's not a question, but really just to perhaps sort of sum up what Shane has said, for the very, very last paragraph in the document at 7.2 talks about the positive relationships, dialogues, and the fact that there's been more progress made. Other cities. Great stance for building and putting in other bids to other places where we can say, look, we've done this, we've achieved what we set out to do, proved it. So really well.
Absolutely. Any other comments? Councillor Agar.
Thanks. I think you're absolutely right, Councillor Mackay, that it will give us greater credibility for the future, as well as providing us with this magnificent project, which we've all wanted to see, and it's been in our minds for quite some time now. And it's so exciting seeing it happening now, you know. So I think in all, from what we've heard tonight, it's a very exciting time. And there's such a lot going on, and I hope that residents and local groups get involved as much as they can. I'd love to see that. And of course, we're going back to our roots in a way, with providing this lovely walkway and routeway going down towards the river past the Hive, because the Romans were doing exactly the same a couple of thousand years back, you know. Because those of you who knew anything about the archaeology that we looked at before the Hive was built, well, no, they were doing just the same. There was loads of stuff going on. So yeah, a great project.
It brings up that familiar phrase, whatever did the Romans do for us? Okay, are there any more questions? No? So I think we're just noting. Are we happy to note this progress report? Councillor Carver, was that a question, or you were just agreeing? Thank you. And that brings us on to agenda item number 12. Agenda item number 12, we're just arguing about who's going to do it.
It's the performance report, yes?
I don't want to steal your thunder.
Somebody's going to do it anyway.
Thank you, Chair. As my name's at the top of it, I'll introduce it. This is our regular performance report for this stage. We're at Q2 at this stage, halfway through the year, to bring us an update on things. There are just four rather specific ones which are showing as red at the moment. The city centre master plan feasibility works. That's work that has been progressing for a long time and has gone through various stages. We are now beginning to get to the point where we're expecting to receive reports from that, but I think we're still going to have some time for internal discussions around those. So we're proposing just to push that deadline back to the end of this month, set a proper deadline and raise proper expectations for the committee in terms of when they. And then the others are in relation to the planning applications. There are a number of changes that are taking place within the service, and we are trying to prioritise our emphasise our work around some of the older applications. So that in terms of the current application process, David may want to say more about that, but if members have any questions. Finance.
Are there any questions? Councillor Barnes.
Thank you, Chair. Just a comment really on the city centre master plan. According to the status, it's been neglected. I'm sure it hasn't been neglected, but it's certainly overdue. But maybe you'd like to comment on the phraseology?
Agree with you, it's overdue.
Yes. Thank you. Councillor Agar.
We probably should say something about the difficulties we've encountered with the planning process. I won't say too much, but I would simply say that we are addressing the backlog in a big way, and we hope to have better news for you in the near future. We are refining the planning process. I imagine that will help a good deal in the way we make decisions, which we make. So we are not leaving this alone. We have a very active new interim director who's, made a tremendous start. Watch this space, I think.
Thank you. Any more questions? So are we happy to note the performance report? Thank you. And that brings us to the end of the agenda, I believe. Yes, that brings us to the end of the agenda.
Ask on any other business. Could I ask you to note Councillor Cleary's apologies for absence?
Thank you. Thank you. So I declare this meeting closed. Thank you all for your attendance.